The message wasn't meant for me, that much was obvious within 3 seconds of reading it. Don't worry, he'll sign anything for her. Old man's basically an ATM with a pulse. A group chat with 3 names I didn't recognize. And my son-in-law's name at the top of it. I read it twice before my coffee went cold in my hand, then a second message came through, 11 seconds later, wrong chat. Ignore that, sending to Claire's dad by mistake lol, that's not what I meant. Just, wrong audience. Wrong recipient. As if the only mistake was that I'd seen it. I set the phone down on the table, slow, careful, the way you set down something you're worried might go off if you drop it, and I didn't respond, not that night. Not the next morning, because the first thing I noticed wasn't the insult. It was the timing. 3 days earlier, Ryan had asked me for $40,000. He'd called it a bridge loan. Said his consulting firm hit a rough quarter, said he just needed to cover payroll until a client payment cleared in March. Said he had it structured clean. Interest, a repayment schedule, the whole thing. I told him I'd have someone look at the paperwork before I signed anything. Of course, he'd said. Quick. Easy. Take your time, Frank. I trust you. I trust you. Funny thing to say to a man you'd apparently already decided would sign anything. I sent the loan documents to an old friend, Walt, who spent 30 years reading numbers for a living and still does it for people he trusts, off the books, as a favor. He called me back 2 days later. Before the text ever landed in my phone. Frank, I went through this twice, he said. The vendor contract he's referencing, there's no record of it anywhere. And this isn't structured like a business loan. It's structured like a personal loan wearing a business logo. Meaning what? Meaning if this firm goes under, you're not first in line to get your money back. You're not on the list at all. I thanked him. Hung up, sat with that for 2 days before the text mistake happened. So by the time I read ATM with a pulse, it wasn't really news, it was just confirmation. The next morning, I called the number listed for the lender on the paperwork. Told them I was a co-signer confirming details before signing. The woman on the other end paused, then said something that made my stomach drop. Sir, this application was already submitted and provisionally approved 8 days ago. 8 days ago. 2 days before Ryan even asked me for the loan out loud. He hadn't been asking my permission. He'd been covering a decision he'd already made. I didn't sleep much that night, not because I was angry. Because I was doing math. If the application had already gone in with my information on it, that wasn't a favor between family. That was fraud, dressed up as a conversation I hadn't finished having yet. I called Priya first thing in the morning. I want to know exactly what he submitted, I said. Before I say one word to my daughter. It took her 3 days to get the full file pulled through the lender's compliance department, using my identity as the account holder they'd need to verify anyway. What came back wasn't just a signature line. It was 6 weeks of financial statements. My financial statements. Bank balances, property valuation, tax records. None of which I had given him. Claire, I said, when I finally called her. I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. Okay. Her voice already sounded uneasy. Did you give Ryan access to any of my financial paperwork? Old tax returns, anything from when I helped you two with the down payment? Silence. Longer than I wanted. There's a folder, she said slowly. From when you helped us buy the house. I think it's still in our filing cabinet. Dad, why? I didn't answer that yet. Don't say anything to him, I said instead. Not yet. I need you to trust me on this. We had dinner Saturday. Nothing dramatic. Just the 3 of us, like old times. Ryan talked about a promising new client, about things finally turning a corner. Claire believed every word. That was the hardest part to watch. When the plates were cleared, I put a folder on the table, not the first one. The real one. "Ryan," I said, "I want to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer, the same way I asked Claire to." He smiled, easy as ever. "Sure, Frank. What's up? When did you submit the loan application?" The smile held for exactly 1 second too long. "Last week? When we talked, the lender has a submission date 8 days before you ever asked me out loud," I said. "Using 6 weeks of my financial documents. Documents you never asked me for." Claire's fork stopped halfway to her plate. "Ryan," she said. "What is he talking about?" He didn't answer fast enough. That was the answer. "I was going to tell you both," he finally said. "I just needed it moving before the vendor deadline. You didn't think I'd check," I said. Quiet. Not raising my voice. "Or you didn't think I'd find the text where you called me an ATM with a pulse, either." "One of those two." Claire went very still. "What text?" I hadn't shown her that part yet. I slid it across the table now, the printed screenshot, timestamp visible. She read it once. Then again, then she set it down and looked at her husband like she was seeing the outline of someone she'd never actually met. "Is this the only time?" she asked him. "Or is this just the time you got caught?" He didn't answer that either. "I need you to go," Claire said, not loud. Steady. Final, in a way I'd never heard from her before. "Claire, come on, we can talk about, go, Ryan." He looked at me once on his way out. I didn't say anything else. A man doesn't need to kick another man once the floor's already gone. The door closed quiet. Somehow that was worse than a slam. The loan application was withdrawn 2 days later, once Priya's letter reached the lender's compliance office. No charges filed. That was Claire's call to make, not mine, and she asked me not to push it further than that. Ryan's firm folded 3 weeks after. I heard it secondhand that I never wired $1. Claire's staying with me for now. Her old room. I never got around to turning it into an office. Some part of me always figured she might need it again. She asked me once, quietly, how I knew to check the submission date before anything even blew up. I didn't know, I told her. I just don't sign things I haven't finished reading. Even when someone tells me to trust them. Especially then. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from.